Anyone who has ever looked at a map of South America will have been surprised by the unusual shape of Chile. At its maximum width, the country measures only 117 kilometers, but over 4,200 kilometers in length. If Chile were located above Europe, it would stretch from the North Cape to Libya. It extends over a total of 38 degrees of latitude, which is why 6 of the world's 9 ecozones are represented there. In addition to ice-cold subpolar zones, it also has deserts where it has not rained for 400 years. And Chile is a pretty extraordinary country in other respects too. So today we take a look at the fascinating history of this country and finally find out why Chile has such a strange shape. Around 10,000 years ago, people first invaded what is now Chile. They lived mainly in the north, where they mainly practiced agriculture, but spread as far south as Patagonia, where the immigrants lived mainly from fishing. These groups of immigrants lived relatively peacefully side by side for many millennia, until around the year 1400, when everything changed in a very short space of time. It was at this time that the Incas invaded the north of what is now Chile. They were able to spread further and penetrated far into the south. The original population was largely displaced in the process. Only in the far south were the Mapuche tribes able to hold out and prevent the Incas from making further advances. But the rule of the Incas was short-lived. From around the year 1500, the colonial power Spain invaded South America and was able to completely defeat and wipe out the Incas within a few years. The conqueror Pedro de Valdivia finally crossed the Atacama Desert in the year 1540 and founded the present-day capital of Santiago. Chile then became part of the viceroyalty of Peru, and the mining of raw materials, especially gold and silver, began, making the Spaniards incredibly rich. However, the Mapuche in the far south of the country remained steadfast and repeatedly won victories against the seemingly overpowering colonial power. They knew the territory very well, and the Spaniards found it very difficult in this harsh and cold area. Even though the Spaniards often drew their colonial empire on contemporary maps as far south as Patagonia, they were never really able to conquer the territory. As a result, the Mapuche remained the only people in Latin America who were able to assert themselves against the European colonial powers. They survived the entire colonial period and still exist today as an ethnic group in Chile. There were repeated independence movements in Chile that demanded separation from Spain. However, this did not become a reality until the year 1800. Spain's power in Europe had long since passed its zenith, and in the year 1808 Napoleon finally occupied the whole of Spain. Many provinces of the Spanish colonial empire seized the opportunity and established their own governments, which advocated independence. This was also the case in Chile. A few years later, however, the Spanish king returned to the throne and wanted to reconquer all the breakaway provinces by force. The Chileans, however, had organized themselves well in the meantime and even formed their own army of freedom fighters. There were several battles in which the Chileans were able to prevail. And even though the Spanish king sent more and more soldiers, he was also defeated in the decisive battle near the capital, and Chile became a formally independent state in the year 1818. At that time, however, Chile did not yet have the extraordinary dimensions it has today. It only comprised the middle third of today's landmass. It was only in the years from 1879 onwards that it was able to achieve its current size. The so-called saltpetre war broke out in the north. At the time, Bolivia introduced a saltpetre tax for Chilean companies, thereby violating existing treaties. Chile then invaded Bolivia, which in turn was allied with Peru. However, Chile was able to defeat both opponents and annexed large areas of both states in the subsequent peace treaty. Bolivia was thus completely cut off from the sea. Around the same time, expansion to the south began, where the Mapuche, who were able to defy both the Incas and the Spanish, were defeated. As a result, Argentina and Chile divided the southern tip of South America between them. So Chile grew incredibly in length, but never in width. The main reason for this is a geographical barrier, the Andes. This mountain range, which runs through the entire country, represents an insurmountable obstacle in most places. On the one hand, this has prevented Chile from expanding to the east, but on the other, it has always been a perfect natural defensive wall, making it very difficult to penetrate Chilean territory.